Welcome everybody to today's, I'm really pleased to welcome Martha Sullivan. She worked for the California Public Utilities Commission. She's a good friend of mine. She's an amazing community organizer. I respect her in every shape, way, or form. She is organized. She speaks for the voiceless. She's amazing. I will read her profile. Oh, for all of our guests today, we are being recorded, full disclosure, for study purposes after today. Martha Sullivan worked for the California Public Utilities Commission from 79 to 98 and spent the last several years there managing the CPUC's environmental review process under the California Environmental Quality Act and in concert with federal agencies under the National Environmental Policy Act. After moving to San Diego County in 2001, Martha has been a grassroots community organizer, including co-founding the Coalition to Decommission San Onofre in 2012, representing Women Occupy of San Diego, and being on the SDSO Coalition to Decommission San Onofre intervener team at the CPUC from 2013 to 2014. As a member of Women Occupy San Diego, she helped pass a ballot measure in 2020 for an independent commission on police practices. Martha has also been an advocate for San Diegans experiencing homelessness. We have a new guest, I'm admitting, and has housed over 36 herself since 2011. So we have a guest that just joined us, and hopefully we can forward Martha's bio to our guest, Harvey Liss, while he connects. We have limited time today, so I'm not going to repeat all of the things I did repeat, except for the fact that we are being recorded today. Martha is absolutely fabulous. She's going to take a short couple of minutes just to introduce her talk, and then we will leave most of our time for question and answer, prioritizing questions from the coalition. So thanks so much. With that, I will give it to Martha. I can't quite hear. I can't hear you.
Can we fix it for her on her Zoom?
Can we fix it? Let's see. She is not, let me see. So let's see here. Martha, I can't hear you. And on my view, you are not, okay. She's holding up a finger.
Which one?
I know. Which one?
Yes.
I know. I'm assuming she can hear us. Okay, so she's entering again. There we go. There we go, Martha. I noticed that the first time I didn't have the admit function. Can you hear me? I just admitted Martha formally, so hopefully we can, I can't hear you. How's your mic, Martha?
It's muted now, right?
No, she on my screen is not muted, but I can't hear her.
Maybe she needs to go out and come in again, check her mic.
Yes, yes.
Can you hear me now?
Well, yes.
We certainly can.
Okay, you got me now?
Beautiful,
Cool.
Martha. Just so you know, I hope, could you hear your introduction, my introduction of you and all of that?
Martha needs to turn down her volume.
Oh, gotta turn the phone off.
She's on 2.
I've got to use the phone to do this.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Leave a meeting on this. That
Okay.
Oh, that's her phone.
well, on the other one.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. You may not be able to see me, but you'll be able to hear me.
Yeah, that works.
Thank you. Okay. Now we've gone through, I don't know where you are. Okay, Harvey can't unmute. Harvey, I wish I could help you.
Oh, now it unmutes. Okay.
Okay, good. So,
We're good.
So I
Great.
can
just
start the video. To start. Oh, there we go. I have
okay.
to, I
So
have to re-enter somehow.
I'm recording. So yeah, perfect. So here's what's happening. I'm not sure if we're all on the same page. I've already introduced Martha. I've introduced all of her fabulous accolades. She's absolutely amazing. 20 years in the CPUC, and she will start her talk now. Thank you so much, Martha. Welcome.
I apologize for that technical glitch. I tried to use my MacBook to do
No
the
worries.
Zoom rather than my phone. And it didn't work. So I'll figure it out later. Anyway, I want to thank my friend Kathy for inviting me. I don't know how useful I'll be since I haven't really been involved much with the CPUC since about 2014. But, I'm happy to share what I've got. I mean, what's unique about the State Public Utilities Commission here in California is that its decisions are reviewed either by the California Appellate Court or by the state Supreme Court. So these 5 commissioners that are appointed by our governor to 6-year terms each, have quite a lot of power in terms of who reviews their decisions and can change their decisions, at least, once the decisions have been formally issued. So I think that's an important thing for everybody to remember, that these are 5 appointed commissioners who wield quite a great deal of power. The commission's jurisdiction, extends over, and this is also important to remember, extends over investor-owned utilities. They don't regulate municipal utilities, like LA County has a municipal water and power utility, Sacramento. The commission regulates the investor-owned utilities like Southern California Edison, San Diego Gas and Electric, Pacific Gas and Electric, and the investor-owned water companies as well. It also has jurisdiction over telecommunications companies, although that's a little more, little less big regulation, like on the energy and the water side. And much of that's been deregulated. Also, some regulatory authority over the transportation companies, like, private tour buses and shuttles and so forth. So it has a broad jurisdiction, plus it has responsibility and jurisdiction over railroad safety in California, which I know there's some interest in here.
You bet.
And there's been a ton of additional emphasis put at the commission over the last, I would say, 10 years, particularly relative to wildfire safety and other kinds of safety because of horrendous accidents that have happened, like the natural gas pipeline explosion in San Bruno that killed people. So safety has become a bigger issue for the commission over the last 10 years, at least from a priority standpoint. In terms of nuclear power and nuclear safety, that's a issue or a conundrum or whatever here in California, because as most of you likely know, then the U.S. nuclear Regulatory Commission has pretty much exclusive jurisdiction over safety of the nuclear power plants. So the California PUC really doesn't have much to say about the safety of San Onofre. It has a lot to say about how the cost associated with San Onofre get passed on to ratepayers or don't get passed on to ratepayers. So it's more about the cost of operating the plant, now decommissioning the plant, as opposed to the safety of the plant.
Mm.
And I know you guys have some questions relative to this, so I'm not going to go too much into it. I'm going to sort of leave it at that, and then, let you go to questions. So because I think that's probably where the most information is going to come out.
Beautiful. Beautiful.
And
Thank
let me
you, Martha.
apologize in advance. I'm hard of hearing, and I don't have a working earphone for my phone, which is one of the reasons I was trying to use my laptop. So if I don't respond right away, I may need to have you repeat the question.
Thank you, Martha. Thank you. First of all, I want to thank you for the links that you sent over yesterday. I had a chance to peruse them. I think most of the coalition, at least everyone, received it. And those have been put in the chat for our visitors. And those are very, very important because they concern a couple of the questions we are about to ask. To reiterate, we are being recorded, but another thing is that we are limited in time. And as Martha said, we, although she may not be able to answer every question today, we may be able to work with her on her opinions via email after today, because we only have until 12 or 12:15. So thank you very much for that. The first question we have, and we are, by the way, prioritizing questions from the coalition. If questions are put in the chat, we will hopefully get to them later. I can't make any promises. The first question is a two-part question, and that is, what's the check and balance for purchases and billing of investor-owned utility? For example, Edison bought 4 Geiger counters at $1,800 a pop and installed them, then billed the ratepayers $300,000. That's part A. The second part is, who has oversight over their billing and purchasing procedures?
The way that the utilities cost are regulated is largely through something called a general rate case, which happens every 3 years for each of the energy utilities. There's a team of PUC auditors that works on this to, do detailed audits of the utility books, which is where this would come in. There's other people who work on more a policy basis. There's engineers that do more technical reviews, but the general rate case every 3 years is the major mechanism. And this can be what's called a reasonableness review. The commission can call out expenditures that don't seem reasonable. There's a variety of sort of sub proceedings that sort of tier off of the general rate cases for specific accounts. And I'm blanking right now on some of the names because I've been away from it so long, but there are certain types of expenditures, like for fuel purchases, that have separate sort of mini proceedings that go on. So that's another way that expenditures can be reviewed and potentially challenged. There's also another avenue for the check and balance, which is called the, I may have to check this because it's been a while since I've looked at this, but there's a separate division in the commission called, I think it's now the Public Advocates, if I remember correctly. The Public Advocates is intended to be an independent body within the commission who also looks at the utilities, primarily energy utilities, and provides their own independent review of the utilities costs, what their rates ought to be, policy issues, and that kind of thing. So there's basically two avenues at the PUC to look at utility expenditures and, you know, raise any kind of questions or issues about them. And it would be the energy division. And again, I'll have to check and make sure if it's still called the energy division. I should have checked that. And then there's the public advocates.
Okay, great. Wonderful. So the second question we have is something that's really pertinent to what we're studying, dealing with rail safety. And Martha just mentioned that, of course, the NRC has purview over all things safety, dealing with nuclear power plants. I guess then there's this gray area when they are transporting the waste off-site. And here's this question regarding this. California's only safety system oversight for our rails is the CPUC. I want to thank Martha for forwarding, especially the link on Rail Safety Division, including freight trains, which I assume, this would be my layman's assumption, to include radioactive waste. In your view, so this is a two-part question again, the first one being, in your view, Martha, what's the best way to occupy CPUC's safety oversight of transport of San O waste? That's a big one for me. Number two, as CPUC holds the purse strings for decommissioning of San O, how is CPUC's oversight of San O waste transport safety not a conflict of interest?
Well, let me answer.
It's a loaded question. Thank you.
Well, no, it's not a loaded question. I'm going to answer the second part just because I want to make sure I address that and it doesn't get buried. You know, it's an interesting point. It's something that, you know, actually happens, you know, not infrequently because the PUC has such broad jurisdiction and covers so many different things. I mean, the cost of the transport is another thing that could be covered by the PUC under its reasonableness reviews of the, you know, of Edison's cost. So in addition to the rail safety, that's another avenue that you could pursue. You know, I hear the point about the conflict of interest, and certainly that's an issue. I think that the best thing that you can do, and this kind of gets to the first point a little bit about how do you advocate on this, you know, about the transport of radioactive waste on via rail within the state. One, I suggest, if you haven't already, that you try to confirm with the PUC Rail Safety Division what indeed its role is on this in terms of Edison transporting, or whomever the responsible party winds up being. What is the PUC's Rail Safety Division's role in the transport via rail of radioactive waste from San Onofre? So I think that would be my first suggestion. And the reason why I'm saying that is because my next suggestion is that you contact the state legislators whose districts include San Onofre
Mhm.
and whose district include the likely rail routes that will be used. And, one, to brief those legislators' offices, and oftentimes, you'll first talk with their staff,
Mhm.
brief those offices and then try to see if those offices will, get involved in terms of asking questions and getting information and also being advocates.
Mhm.
Because in my experience, both inside the PUC and outside the PUC as an advocate, the reality is that they're going to answer a legislator's office quicker than they're going to answer an advocate.
Right,
And
right.
that's just the reality.
Yeah.
So those would be my two suggestions.
Great. Fantastic. Now, this next question, it blew my mind. So you sent a fabulous, let me get the redone question here on my notes. So to me, this is very interesting. You sent a link on actual, searching dockets, right? So the question is, I would like to know if there's an easy, foolproof way to check the docket for the next Edison and SDG&E rate case involving CPUC reviews of withdrawals from the $4 billion decommissioning trust fund. And a little aside to this is interesting. Martha provided a CPUC website link tracking issues of interest. I tried to search multiple times last night using all manner of keywords like rate case, San Onofre decommissioning trust fund, and with the filing under Pacific Gas Electric Company, nothing comes up. So I'm wondering if this is intentional or if you have a suggestion on how to access these dockets.
Unfortunately, it's a very opaque system. And some of that's intentional and some of it's just a function of a bureaucracy that's now over 100 years old, that has had layers upon layers upon layers added to it, and it hasn't been re-engineered really, to just sort of have one seamless system. There is an office at the commission called the Public Advisor's Office, whose job is to assist people in participating in the commission's proceedings. So that's another contact I would suggest making, is to call the Public Advisor's Office, tell them what you're interested in, tracking and what you're interested in participating in, and get their assistance. There are in that link I sent you, I think one of the sublinks was something about a subscription service.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there are various topics or whatever that you can subscribe to. You can also, each of the, proceeding is a major word you just have to get used to with the PUC. The proceeding is a case.
Okay.
So each of the general rate cases, for example, is a proceeding. There's a service list for each proceeding. The commission operates basically kind of as a court. It's very formal. There's an administrative law judge that presides, as a judge. So the service list is anybody who's on that service list gets served with copies of any filings in that proceeding. Now, you know, getting on the service list as a party is a lot more, takes a lot more effort than just getting on the service list as an information only recipient. Information only doesn't get every filing that's made. It gets primarily things that are issued by the commission, like administrative law judge rulings or notices of, you know, hearings or public meetings or other notices, you know, public notices that are required. So there's a variety of ways to approach that as well. I mean, you can request to be put on the information only service list once you figure out, you know, which proceeding you're interested in. And again, this is something that I really encourage you to, you know, see what the public advisor, you know, will help you with, because this is one of their core functions.
Perfect. In relation to what you just mentioned, so if you're a party, right? So we have a question that relates to the intervener process, and it's a two-part question. And the immediate response from the peanut gallery was, if we want to intervene, should we be looking for the next Edison GRC, general rate case application, or do we look for an is it OII? Yeah.
Order instituting investigation.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, I don't know that answer for sure. There was a proceeding on the decommissioning trust fund. And I don't know what the current status of that is. Again, I think that this is something that, you know, rather than spending a lot of time trying to figure this out on your own, call the public advisor.
Okay. And then,
you know, I mean, I think that may save some time and frustration trying to sort out all the labyrinth and, you know, procedures and processes and so forth at the PUC. It's just, you know, again, it's basically operates like a court. So it's very, I mean, the plus to this is that there's a huge paper trail. And there's huge opportunities for, you know, public input. The downside of it is that there's a huge paper trail. And there's a lot. I mean, you can be inundated. They also don't make it easy to become a party. They don't let anybody become a party. You know, when the Coalition to Decommission San Onofre intervened, first we intervened in the order instituting investigation, basically into shutting down San Onofre. Then we intervened in the decommissioning trust fund proceeding. And the second one, you know, we almost got kept out because the utilities, aided to some degree by the administrative law judge, were trying to argue that we didn't have standing. And we were able to, you know, to the ALJ's credit, she did allow us to sort of reapply and ultimately gave us standing as a party. So they don't make it easy to become a party, and you also don't want to undertake it lightly because it's a big responsibility. You've got to file everything on the rest of the parties, which with email is much easier than it used to be. You don't have to literally, I'm not positive. I don't think you literally have to mail stuff to people anymore. But it is a big responsibility because you have to follow the rules. You know, there's a unit within the administrative law judge division called the docket office, which is, you know, it's the It's where all the filings and the commission proceedings are formally made.
Mhm.
And they can be very persnickety about accepting your filing. I mean, for the most, tiny, minute typos, errors, and so forth.
Mhm.
So it's a big responsibility. And I don't mean to scare anybody off, but it's not something you want to undertake lightly. You want to
Thanks.
understand what you're taking on.
I have a really great question. But I want everyone to know we're at 12:01. Martha, are you amenable to going just a little bit longer?
Yeah, I should be okay.
Are
I
you
have
sure?
to. I do have to get off probably no later than 12:15.
Okay, fantastic. We really appreciate your generosity with your time. So in answer to what you're saying, it's we have one coalition member who is an intervener or was an intervener with the CPUC, and so now we have him saying, well, the public advisor gave me the wrong case. So it's just very frustrating. I acknowledge that
I hear you.
frustration. And if you can, if you think this will inform this conversation, I don't know how long this would take, and I don't know if we should move on to a different question. But for me, it's of interest. We might want to, I'll leave it up to you, Martha. So you briefly touched on your experience with citizens oversight as Coalition Decommission Sano intervener team at the CPUC in 2013 and 14. Would it inform this whole conversation if you talked about the process and your experience, or should we go on?
Well, I mean,
Understanding that it's a
my only
huge.
pause is, the process generally, again, it operates like a court. So the way that a proceeding goes, there's generally a pre-hearing conference, at the start of a proceeding, and that's where people can become parties if they aren't already. You can make your argument for being a party. That sets up the scope of the proceeding and so forth. Then there's generally, and I'm gonna very much generalize all this, so this isn't intended to be detailed. Then generally there are like opening statement kind of filings for each party to sort of set the stage of what they think needs to be undertaken in the proceeding. And then you wind up going into preparation for evidentiary hearings. And each party has the opportunity to present their own witnesses with testimony. They have the opportunity to cross-examine other, the witnesses and testimony of other parties. And then, that's to build what's called the record. The evidence on which the commission is supposed to base its decision. It's not supposed to just pull stuff out of thin air. It's supposed to base it on the record that's been built, in a given proceeding. Following the evidentiary hearings, there are briefs, there are legal briefs, and that's each party's opportunity to basically sort of summarize their position, and which is followed by reply briefs. So that you can, if you want to rebut any other party's closing position, that kind of thing. In the midst of all this, there's all sorts of motions and reply to motions. You've got to keep track of, what's happening, because if you don't, you can either miss an opportunity, or you can also miss somebody who's trying to shoot you down and get you either out of the proceeding or shut down a line of reasoning or argument that you're trying to, develop in the proceeding. So, it is it's a full-blown like court case. And I mean, Ray Lutz and I were basically the intervener team for the coalition to decommission San Onofre, and neither of us were attorneys. You know, I had the benefit of sort of familiarity with the PUC from the inside, but I was never involved on the formal proceeding side. I was always on the staff side, you know, drafting resolutions and reports and so forth. So it was a big learning curve for me, but I at least understood the basic mechanism. And Ray, you know, was just really excellent with collecting data and presenting data and, you know, being able to look at other parties' data, you know, and question it and come up with really effective challenges. So you can do it not being an attorney, but it's intense.
Yeah.
And you gotta play by the rules or you're gonna get kicked out.
Yeah. Fantastic. Okay, so we really want to probably limit this to at max one more question. And I realize you haven't been there. You know, you haven't been there, so these might be difficult to answer, and we can go on to a different one if it's, you know, if you prefer. The next one, I would like insights into the current politics of the commission as it relates to public safety. That's so the San Bruno pipeline you mentioned killed a CPUC employee many years ago, inviting them to blow the whistle. With help from Samuel Lawrence Foundation, we mailed a personal hand addressed invitation to every CPUC employee, inviting them to blow the whistle. I believe CPUC's inability to enforce pipeline safety issues was directly responsible for the death of Jackie Gregg and her daughter, Janessa. To our surprise, not one employee came forward, not one. I'm hoping that Martha can offer a critique of what may have gone wrong and how we could do better.
You know, I can only really speak, you know, more from, you know, just working for that regulatory agency for 20 years and then interacting, you know, both with the PUC and the NRC and other agencies, you know, since then. Being a whistleblower is really hard. It is really, really hard. The consequences are severe. And I understand that in the context of people dying, the consequences to the whistleblower, you know, don't seem as severe. But to the whistleblower, the loss of their job and potentially basically being blackballed in the industry, you know, from getting any other employment is very severe. It's very serious. And that it's made pretty clear, maybe not overtly, but it's made very clear to you in a variety of different ways that, you know, if you don't toe the line, if you question, you know, what's being handed down, what you're being directed to do, or what you're being directed not to do, you know, that even if you're not outright fired because of civil service, you can be left languishing, you know, in some, you know, dark corner somewhere where you're basically will never see the light of day again. You know, and so I don't want to minimize how essential whistleblowers are, but I also want to remind people that it takes a lot of courage and fortitude to be a whistleblower. I mean, the main reason I resigned from the commission in early 1998 was because they called it electric restructuring, was basically the deregulation of the electricity pricing in California was about to be implemented. This was something that was pushed by Governor Wilson and his commission appointees. There was a lot of resistance to it within the staff of the commission. There was a lot of testimony, given about the consequences of doing it, and they persisted in pushing it, and it was a disaster. In 2000, 2001, it turned the California economy upside down. So, in San Diego was like ground zero of that. We're still remember Zenron by the Sea. So, I wasn't a whistleblower per se while I was at the PUC. I certainly did what I could to support colleagues who were trying to slow the roll of this thing from going out. But I finally had to resign and leave because I couldn't be a part of it any longer.
Mm.
And I went into, private practice consulting, doing environmental impact studies and so forth, primarily on federal projects for a year after I left. And then I did some work with the PUC and with other state agencies. But that really informed my volunteer work when I moved to San Diego in 2001. In the subsequent 10 years after that, I tried to stop a high voltage transmission line that was going to go through Anza Borrego State Park. And then I got involved with, keeping San Onofre shut. And because I understood what was going on inside the PUC.
Mm. So in your, just a last minute comment before we get off here, would you say that they don't necessarily represent the public interest? This is just, we're up against another stone wall. How do you even occupy them?
I can't say that monolithically there's no public interest represented at the commission. There are some issues relative to like renewable energy and rooftop solar.
Yeah.
That
yeah,
they've actually made some pretty good strides in. The difficulty, the huge difficulty is the money is behind the utilities.
Right.
The money, the utilities have virtually unlimited amounts of money to lobby. And while, certain good things can happen, anything that the utilities don't want to happen may very well not. Because that's where the money is.
Yeah.
And they've got the money to hire the lobbyists, and who basically, you talk about occupying. The lobbyists basically occupy the PUC. They're in all the proceedings, they're in the building. It's pervasive.
Thank you so much, Martha, for going way over time and for sharing your experience. And this brought up a whole slew of questions for me. We didn't even get to the last couple questions, but you hit on some main things, and you gave us some conduits to explore and get serious about the research. So I really appreciate your time. Thank you so very much.
You're very welcome.
I realize you have something going on. So everyone give her, I'm going to contact you later with a big, huge thank you. I know
Sure.
you're busy today. So am I. Give Martha a round of applause, everybody.
Hello.
Unmute,
Martha.
unmute
Thank you,
yourself.
everybody.
Good seeing you.
And we
Keep
miss
up the
all
good
of
work.
yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Keep up the good work.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you, Martha.
Bye,
You take
Martha.
care.
Oh, discouraging.
It's very discouraging, but we got some good information. And you know what? That's where press comes in. So you do your research, you get a good, I think we could maybe get some press off of our research. But thanks everyone for tuning in. I have another meeting at 12:30. Is there anything death-defyingly important right now?
Did Roger tune in to the meeting?
Yes.
Yeah, he
said-
came in when Martha started halfway
Okay.
through. He came in. Hi, Roger. We'll have to
Hi,
get your
Roger.
report on the LA Times later. Okay.
Yes, good morning. I heard it. Thank you.
Fantastic.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
everybody.
Thank you, Kathy.
Thank
Kathy.
you, everybody. Thanks for joining in, Harvey and Judy and all of you fabulous people. Bye.
Bye.